The stars hung cold and distant in the blackness of space as the horizon's edge drifted through the outer veil sector. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the data streams flow across the main screen. His ship was small compared to military vessels, built for science and exploration rather than war. 42 souls called this vessel home, and Jake knew every single one of them by name. "Captain, we're picking up something unusual on long-range sensors," said Commander Amy Wallace from her station. Her fingers danced across the controls as she tried to get a clearer reading. "Multiple signatures, big ones coming in fast from the east quadrant." Jake leaned forward, his instincts suddenly alert. They were far from any established trade routes, deep in unexplored space where few ships ventured. "How many are we talking about, Amy?" "At least 50 contacts, sir." "No, wait, more than that. They're still coming into range." Amy's voice carried a note of concern that made Jake's chest tighten. From the engineering station, Chief Engineer Lisa Grant looked up from her work. "That's a full fleet, Captain. We shouldn't be seeing anything like that out here." Jake stood and walked closer to the main view screen. "Open a channel. Let's see who our neighbors are." The screen flickered to life, and what appeared made Jake's blood run cold. Massive warships filled the view, their hulls covered in dark metal plates that seemed to drink in the starlight. These were Vraxian vessels, and Jake had heard enough stories about them to know this was trouble. The Vraxians were known throughout the galaxy as aggressive and territorial, a species that respected only strength and viewed diplomacy as weakness. A face appeared on the screen, reptilian and cruel. The creature stood over 7 feet tall, its scales a deep green that looked almost black in the harsh lighting of its bridge. This was War Master Krelthar, though Jake didn't know his name yet. He would learn it soon enough. "Human vessel," the Vraxian commander's voice rumbled through the speakers, thick with contempt. "You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Your ship, your data, and your crew now belong to the Vraxian Dominion." Jake felt his crew's eyes on him. In the medbay, Dr. Paul Sanders had stopped his work and was listening to the exchange. Every person on the ship knew what this meant. The Vraxians didn't make empty threats, and they certainly didn't ask twice. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Terran exploration vessel Horizon's Edge. We're on a peaceful scientific mission under the protection of the Galactic Concordat. We have no quarrel with the Vraxian Dominion and request safe passage through this sector." Krelthar's laugh was like rocks grinding together. "The Concordat is weak, human. Their rules mean nothing to us. You have 1 minute to comply or we will take your ship by force. Your choice is simple, surrender or die." Jake looked around his bridge. Amy met his eyes with a steady gaze. Lisa had already moved to her station, ready for whatever came next. These weren't soldiers, but they were his people, and he would not hand them over to become prisoners or slaves. "Lisa, encrypt all our data and send everything to the nearest human outpost. Include our logs in this conversation," Jake said quietly. "Amy, send a distress signal on all channels. Make sure it reaches home." "Captain," Krelthar's voice cut through the bridge again, "your time is up. What is your answer?" Jake straightened his uniform and looked directly at the alien commander. "My answer is no. We are not pirates or invaders. We're explorers under the protection of interstellar law. If you attack us, you're attacking Earth itself." For a moment, silence filled the bridge of the Horizon's Edge. Then Krelthar's face twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Then you have chosen death, foolish human. Let your fate be a lesson to your species about defying the Dominion." The screen went dark. "All hands, battle stations," Jake called out over the ship's intercom. "This is not a drill. Engineering, give me everything you've got. Amy, coordinate defensive measures. Paul, prepare for casualties." Alarms began wailing throughout the ship as the crew rushed to their positions. Lisa's hands flew across her console, redirecting power from non-essential systems to shields and engines. The Horizon's Edge was never meant for combat, but humanity had learned long ago to prepare every ship for the worst. "Captain, they're spreading out to surround us," Amy reported. 53 vessels confirmed. "We're outgunned by at least 50 to 1. Jake studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. The asteroid field was nearby, dense enough to provide some cover. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Lisa, can we make it to those asteroids?" "If I push the engines past their safety limits, yes. But Captain, even if we reach them, we can't fight that entire fleet." "I know," Jake said softly, "but we can make them remember us. We can make them pay for every meter they take." Send one more message to that Vraxian commander. Tell him that humans don't surrender. Tell him we'd rather die free than live as slaves." Amy nodded and sent the message. Seconds later, the Vraxian fleet opened fire. Space lit up with energy beams and missiles. The horizon's edge shuddered as the first impacts hit their shields. Warning lights flashed across every console. Lisa coaxed more power from the engines, sending the ship racing toward the asteroid field as weapons fire streaked past them. "Return fire," Jake ordered. "Show them what humans can do." The horizon's edge's weapons were designed for clearing debris and defending against pirates, not fighting a fleet. But they fired anyway, their beams striking at the nearest Vraxian cruiser. The shots barely scratched its armor, but that wasn't the point. The point was defiance. The point was showing these aliens that humanity would not go quietly into the night. Jake gripped his command chair as another impact rocked the ship. Around him, his crew worked with fierce determination. They were scientists and explorers, not warriors. But in this moment, they became something more. They became humanity's answer to those who thought humans could be bullied and broken. The horizon's edge plunged into the asteroid field with the Vraxian fleet in pursuit. Behind them, Earth was light years away. Their families would not know their fate for weeks. But Jake Morrison and his crew were not thinking about distance or odds or fear. They were thinking about one thing only: making these aliens regret the day they threatened a human ship. The battle had begun, and though the horizon's edge could not win, they would make sure the galaxy remembered what happened when you cornered humans and gave them no choice but to fight. The asteroid field became a maze of rock and death. The horizon's edge wove between massive space rocks, each one large enough to hide the ship for precious seconds. Lisa Grant's hands never stopped moving across her console, pushing the engines. Beyond every safety limit she had been taught to respect, the ship groaned and shuddered with each maneuver, but it held together. 3 fighters coming in from above, Amy called out, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Brace for impact." Jake felt the ship twist hard to port as Lisa threw them into a desperate dodge. The Vraxian fighters screamed past, their weapons tearing chunks from an asteroid where the horizon's edge had been moments before. The human ship's defensive guns tracked and fired, catching one of the fighters with a lucky shot. It exploded in a brief flash of light. "One down," Amy said with grim satisfaction. 52 to go. In the engineering section, Lisa watched her displays with growing concern. Temperature readings were climbing into the red zone. Power conduits were overloading. The ship was tearing itself apart from the inside, but she kept pushing. Every second they survived was another second for their message to travel across space toward home. "Captain, we've got a cruiser moving to cut us off," Amy reported. "It's trying to trap us against that large asteroid cluster." Jake studied the tactical display. The Vraxian commander was learning, adapting to their tactics. The massive warship was positioning itself to limit their options, forcing them into tighter spaces where the horizon's edge's speed advantage meant nothing. "Lisa, can we use that asteroid? The big one?" Jake asked. Lisa's eyes widened as she understood what he was suggesting. "You want a slingshot around it? Captain, at this speed, if I miscalculate by even a fraction, we'll smash right into it." "Then don't miscalculate," Jake said simply. "Amy, the moment we come around, I want every weapon we have hitting that cruiser's bridge." The horizon's edge dove toward the massive asteroid, engines screaming. Vraxian fighters followed, sensing their prey was cornered. Lisa's calculations flashed across her screen, numbers shifting and changing as she accounted for velocity, gravity, and the ship's failing systems. Her finger hovered over the control that would commit them to the maneuver. "Trust me," she whispered to her ship, and activated the burn. The horizon's edge whipped around the asteroid, gravity pulling at the hull with forces that made the metal groan. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed like they would crash, but Lisa's calculations held true. They came around the other side at incredible speed, directly facing the Vraxian cruiser that had been hunting them. "Fire everything," Jake ordered. Every weapon the horizon's edge possessed fired at once. Beams and missiles streaked across the gap between the ships, all focused on one target. The Vraxian cruiser's shields flared bright, then failed under the concentrated assault. Weapons. Fire tore into its bridge section, and secondary explosions rippled across its hull. The massive warship began to drift, dead in space. On the Vraxian flagship, Krelthar watched the display with disbelief and growing rage. These humans had just destroyed one of his cruisers with a science vessel. A science vessel. His subordinates looked at him nervously, waiting for orders. "All ships converge on the human vessel," Krelthar snarled. "I want it destroyed, no more games, crush them." The net began to close. Vraxian warships moved to surround the asteroid field from all sides. There would be no escape, no more tricks. The horizon's edge was being boxed in, and everyone on board knew it. "Captain, I'm reading power fluctuations across all systems," Lisa reported. "We can't keep this up much longer, maybe another hour at most." Jake nodded slowly. He had known from the beginning how this would end. They all had. But they had fought, and they had made these aliens bleed. That was worth something. "All hands. This is the captain," Jake said over the intercom, his voice calm. "You've all performed beyond anything I could have asked. You've shown these aliens what humans are made of. Whatever happens next, be proud of what we've accomplished here today." In the medbay, Dr. Paul Sanders worked on 3 injured crew members, burns and broken bones from the violent maneuvers and weapons hits. He could hear the captain's words over the speakers, and paused in his work to listen. Around him, the wounded crew members lifted their heads, their faces set with determination. "We're not done yet, Doc," one of them said through gritted teeth. "We can still fight." Paul nodded and helped the injured engineer to his feet. If they were going down, they would go down at their stations. The Vraxian fleet opened fire from all directions. The horizon's edge's shields collapsed under the massive assault. Hull breaches appeared in a dozen sections. Atmosphere vented into space until emergency bulkheads sealed. The ship's defensive. Fire became sporadic as weapon systems failed one by one. "Hull integrity at 30%, Amy called out over the sound of alarms. "We've lost main power to decks 3 and 4. Fire suppression systems are offline." Jake looked around his bridge. Smoke filled the air, and sparks showered from damaged consoles. But his crew remained at their posts. Amy coordinated damage control teams. Lisa fought to keep the engines running despite catastrophic damage. They were professionals to the end. "Captain, incoming message from the Vraxian commander," Amy said. "Put it through." Krelthar's face appeared on the cracked view screen. "Human captain, you have fought well. Surrender now, and I will grant you and your crew a quick death. Continue to resist, and I will make your final moments agony." Jake wiped blood from a cut on his forehead and smiled. "You don't understand us at all, do you? We're not fighting because we think we can win. We're fighting because it's who we are. And when our people learn what happened here, when they see how hard we fought, they're going to come for you. All of them. You've made a terrible mistake today, Krelthar. You should have left us alone." "Foolish human. Your people are weak. They will not come. They will hide and hope we forget about them." "Then I guess you'll find out," Jake said. He turned to his crew. "Lisa, Amy, Paul, everyone listening, it's been an honor serving with you." The Vraxian fleet fired their final salvo. Massive beams of energy converged on the crippled horizon's edge from all directions. The ship's hull, already damaged beyond repair, could not withstand the assault. Jake's last thought was of Earth, of blue skies and green fields, of a home he would never see again. He thought of his crew and their courage. He thought of the message they had sent, traveling through space, carrying the truth of what had happened here. The horizon's edge exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Metal and fire expanded outward in a brief sphere that faded quickly in the cold of space. Where the ship had been, there was now only debris and silence. On his flagship, Krelthar watched the destruction with satisfaction. The human ship was gone. The annoying resistance was over. He had taught these newcomers a lesson about defying the Vraxian dominion. Let the other human ships hear about this and learn to show proper respect. "Set course for the human colonies in the adjacent sectors," Krelthar ordered. "We will continue our expansion. These humans need to learn their place in the galaxy." His officers obeyed, turning the fleet toward human space. They had won a great victory today, destroying an enemy ship that dared to resist them. The War Master was pleased. But far away, across the vast distances of space, a message was being received. Data was being analyzed. Videos were being watched. And on hundreds of human worlds, billions of people were learning what had happened to the Horizon's Edge and her crew of 42 explorers. Krelthar had indeed taught humanity a lesson, just not the one he intended. The message arrived at New Perth Colony on a quiet Tuesday morning. Communications Officer Danny West was drinking his coffee when the priority signal came through. He nearly dropped his cup when he saw the encryption level and source designation, Horizon's Edge, full distress protocol. Complete data dump. Danny's hand shook as he routed the message to Governor Helen Brooks. Within minutes, every senior official on New Perth was gathered in the Emergency Operations Center, watching the recordings that Jake Morrison had sent before his ship died. The video quality was poor, damaged by the data compression needed to send it so far, but the content was clear enough. They watched the Vraxian fleet surround the peaceful exploration vessel. They heard Krelthar's demands and threats. They saw Jake Morrison's refusal to surrender his crew. And they watched the Horizon's Edge fight against impossible odds. Governor Brooks was a tough woman who had helped build New Perth from an empty world into a thriving colony of 8 million people. She had seen hard times and made hard choices, but as she watched 42 humans die defending their right to explore the stars in peace, tears ran down her face. "Send this to Earth immediately," she ordered. "Full priority. And get it to every human world, every colony, every outpost. Everyone needs to see this." The message spread like wildfire across human space. On Earth, the Terran Parliament received it first. Representatives who had been arguing about budget allocations and trade agreements suddenly found themselves watching something far more important. The chamber fell silent as Captain Morrison's final words played over the speakers. "We're not fighting because we think we can win. We're fighting because it's who we are." Parliament member Kevin Hughes stood slowly after the video ended. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. "We need to call an emergency session. Right now. This is an act of war." Within hours, the recordings were public. On Earth, in orbital stations, on Mars and Europa and Titan, on colony worlds scattered across 200 star systems, humans stopped what they were doing and watched. They watched scientists and explorers fight like warriors. They watched their fellow humans refuse to surrender even when death was certain. They watched the Horizon's Edge die in fire and light. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Military recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers. Colony militias that had been training exercises suddenly became serious fighting units. Retired officers contacted their old commands, asking to return to service. Parents held their children and talked about duty and sacrifice. Young people looked at the stars with new understanding. Admiral Peter Quinn was in his office at Terran Naval Command when the summons came. He was a career officer, 40 years in service, a veteran of the border conflicts where humans had fought pirates and smugglers. He had always known this day would come. Peace was wonderful, but the galaxy was not a peaceful place. He stood before Parliament the next morning, his uniform crisp, his bearing military perfect. The representatives wanted answers, wanted to know what could be done, wanted to know if humanity was ready for war. "Members of Parliament, honored representatives," Quinn began, "what happened to the Horizon's Edge was not an accident. It was not a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate attack on unarmed explorers by a hostile force that believed we would do nothing in response." He paused, letting his words sink in. The Vraxian commander made a calculation. He believed that humans are weak, that we value peace so much we will accept any insult rather than fight. He thought we would see the destruction of one ship as an acceptable loss. He was wrong. Quinn activated the display behind him, showing fleet positions and force readiness reports. Every human who joins the military swears an oath. Part of that oath includes a promise: we leave no one behind. We protect our own. The Vraxians killed 42 of our people, 42 explorers who were doing nothing more threatening than mapping stars and studying planets. If we do nothing, we tell every hostile species in the galaxy that human lives are cheap, that we can be attacked with impunity. "What are you proposing, Admiral?" asked Parliament member Susan Clark. "War," Quinn said simply. "Total mobilization. Every available ship, every trained soldier, every resource we can spare. We find the Vraxian fleet that did this. We find their commander. And we make sure that no one ever again thinks they can murder humans without consequence." The debate lasted through the night and into the next day. Some argued for restraint, for working through the Galactic Concordat, for trying diplomacy first. But the public would not be restrained. Across human space, billions demanded action. They had seen the video. They had heard Jake Morrison's words. They would not accept their fellow humans dying for nothing. When Parliament finally voted, it was unanimous. Operation Righteous Fury was authorized. Admiral Quinn immediately activated the fleet mobilization protocols that had been prepared, but never used. Every human warship received deployment orders. The shipyards went to full production. Supply chains that had been moving food and consumer goods switched to military equipment. The response was staggering even to Quinn. He had expected maybe 100 ships could be ready within a month. Instead, 300 warships reported ready for deployment within 3 weeks. Captains who had been running cargo or passenger routes volunteered their vessels for support roles. The colonial defense forces, which had been part-time militias, transformed into serious military units overnight. On New Perth, Governor Brooks watched as troop transports began arriving. Young men and women from across the colonies came to volunteer. They had seen the video. They wanted to be part of the response. Lieutenant Kate Pierce was one of them. She had been a cargo pilot before, running supplies between colonies. Her brother had been an engineer. His name was Andrew Pierce, and he had died on the horizon's edge. Kate didn't cry when she learned of his death. She simply walked to the nearest recruitment center and joined the Marines. Across human space, similar stories played out thousands of times. The crew of the Horizon's Edge had become martyrs. Their sacrifice a rallying cry that united humanity in a way nothing else ever had. Admiral Quinn stood on the bridge of the Defiant, his flagship as the massive fleet assembled, dreadnoughts that could level cities, carriers filled with fighters, cruisers armed with weapons that could crack planets, support ships carrying supplies for a long campaign, and most importantly, 30,000 Marines trained and ready for boarding actions. He opened a channel to all ships in the fleet. "This is Admiral Quinn. In a few hours we will enter Vraxian space. We are not going there to conquer. We are not going there to start an empire. We are going there because 42 of our people were murdered for the crime of being curious about the universe. We are going there to deliver justice." He paused, looking at the faces of his bridge crew, young and old, experienced and fresh from training. They all shared the same determined expression. The Vraxians believe we are soft. They believe we value peace so much that we will accept any insult rather than fight. They are about to learn the truth about humanity. We do value peace. We came to the stars hoping to find friends and wonders, but we came prepared for war, because our history taught us that peace is only possible when you are ready and willing to defend it. Quinn's voice hardened. The Vraxian fleet thought they could destroy one ship and frighten us into submission. Instead, they have awakened something they don't understand. They have united 800 billion humans in righteous anger. They have given us a reason to show the galaxy what we are capable of when you threaten our own. He looked at the tactical display, showing the fleet stretching across space like an angry constellation. "Send this message on all frequencies in every known language. Tell the Vraxians that we are coming. Tell them that humanity has judged them and found them guilty. Tell them that the price for murdering our explorers is about to be paid in full." The message was transmitted across the galaxy. War Master Krelthar received it on his flagship as he approached another human colony world, planning to intimidate them into submission just as he had done with the Horizon's Edge. When he saw the size of the fleet heading toward Vraxian space, he finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. This was not a police action or a limited response. This was the full military might of an entire species, focused like a laser on one target: vengeance for their fallen. The human fleet arrived at the Vraxian border like a storm of metal and fire. 300 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their weapons already charging, their shields at maximum. The Vraxian border stations, expecting perhaps a small protest fleet or a diplomatic mission, found themselves staring at an armada that blocked out the stars. Admiral Quinn stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the tactical displays with cold calculation. Intelligence had provided good information about Vraxian fleet positions and defensive capabilities. The Vraxians were experienced warriors who had conquered dozens of species over centuries of expansion, but they had never fought humanity before. "Scan complete, Admiral," reported Commander Gary Tucker from the sensor station, detecting 47 Vraxian warships in this system, mostly cruisers and destroyers. "They're moving to intercept. Open a channel, Quinn ordered. All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this. The communication officer nodded, and Quinn spoke with the full authority of Earth and 800 billion humans behind his words. This is Admiral Peter Quinn of the Terran Navy. We are here to deliver justice for the murder of 42 human citizens aboard the Horizon's Edge. Warmaster Krelthar and all officers involved in that attack are hereby ordered to surrender themselves for trial. The Vraxian government has 1 hour to comply. The response came quickly. A Vraxian admiral appeared on screen, his scales the dark red of a career military officer. Human Admiral, you invade our space with threats and demands. This is an act of war. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. Quinn's expression didn't change. You declared war when you destroyed our ship. We're simply answering your declaration. You have 1 hour. The channel closed. Quinn turned to his weapons officer. Lieutenant Frank Barnes, status? All weapons ready, sir. Fleet reports full combat capability. The hour passed with no response from the Vraxian government. Their border fleet instead moved into attack formation, clearly intending to drive the humans back through sheer force. It was a mistake that would cost them dearly. They're not going to surrender, Admiral, Commander Tucker observed. I know, Quinn said quietly. Execute Attack Plan Alpha. Show them what happens when you kill humans. The human fleet moved forward. The Vraxians opened fire first, their massive energy weapons reaching out across space. But the human formation broke apart in a coordinated scatter pattern that the Vraxians hadn't anticipated. Instead of meeting them head-on, the human ship spread out and came at them from multiple angles. Squadron Commander Nick Carter led his fighter wing in the first wave. His craft was small and fast, built for speed and agility rather than armor. Behind him, 200 other fighters launched from the carrier ships, forming up into attack groups. This is for the Horizon's Edge, Nick said over his squadron's channel. Make every shot count. The fighters hit the Vraxian fleet like angry hornets. They were too small and too fast for the big ship weapons to track effectively. The Vraxians had to use their point defense systems, but the human fighters came in coordinated waves that overwhelmed those defenses. Missiles and energy weapons struck at engines and weapon emplacements, crippling ships before they could effectively respond. Meanwhile, the human capital ships engaged with tactics the Vraxians had never seen before. Human cruisers coordinated their fire with millisecond precision, focusing their weapons on single targets and overwhelming shields through sheer concentrated power. The first Vraxian destroyer exploded within minutes of engagement. Then another, and another. They're breaking formation, Commander Tucker reported. The Vraxian fleet is falling back. Don't let them retreat, Quinn ordered. I want every ship that participated in the attack on our people either captured or destroyed. No escape, no mercy for military targets. The human fleet pressed forward relentlessly. Stealth frigates that the Vraxians hadn't even detected suddenly appeared behind their lines, hitting command ships and carriers. The Vraxians tried to regroup, but their communications were being jammed by electronic warfare specialists who had trained for exactly this kind of fight. Within 3 hours, the border fleet was destroyed. 47 Vraxian warships reduced to wreckage and escape pods. Not a single human ship was lost, though several had taken damage. Admiral, we're receiving distress calls from the Vraxian ships, the communications officer reported. They're requesting rescue, Quinn nodded. Bring them in. Treat wounded prisoners with full medical care. We're here for justice, not genocide. Make sure they understand the difference. The human fleet moved deeper into Vraxian space. On the fortress world of Drakmor, Warmaster Krelthar watched the reports with growing horror. The humans hadn't just defeated the border fleet. They had destroyed it completely while taking minimal damage. These were not the weak newcomers he had expected. How many ships do they have? Krelthar demanded. At least 300, Warmaster, his intelligence officer reported. All military grade, well equipped, and their crews are highly trained. They fight with coordination we've never seen before. And sir, they're heading straight for this system. Krelthar's claws scraped against his command chair. Recall all fleets. I want every available ship defending Drakmor. If they want to fight, we'll give them one they won't forget. But the human advance was unstoppable. Every Vraxian fleet that tried to intercept them was defeated. The humans used tactics that seemed impossible. Their ships appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before the Vraxians could respond effectively. Their marines boarded damaged Vraxian vessels with practiced efficiency, securing ships before they could self-destruct. Commander Beth Sullivan led one such boarding action. Her Marine team breached a Vraxian cruiser's hull, moving through the corridors in coordinated fire teams. The Vraxians fought hard, but human Marines trained in zero-gravity combat and equipped with powered armor were more than their match. Bridge secured, Beth reported as her team captured the Vraxian admiral commanding the vessel. 3 enemy officers in custody, including the admiral. Minimal casualties on both sides. It was the same story across the war zone. The humans fought with precision and discipline, but also with restraint. Civilian populations were not targeted. Humanitarian aid followed the fleet, helping Vraxian refugees displaced by the fighting. It became clear to everyone watching that humanity's war was specifically against those responsible for the horizon's edge, not against the Vraxian people as a whole. This actually made the Vraxians more afraid. They understood mindless rage and conquest. But humans who fought with both overwhelming force and careful precision were something they couldn't comprehend. Within a month, the human fleet had shattered 3 major Vraxian defense lines. The Vraxian High Council, watching their military collapse before the human advance, sent desperate messages to the Galactic Concordat asking for intervention. But the Concordat response was clear. The Vraxians had violated established protocols by attacking a peaceful vessel. Humanity's response, while overwhelming, was legally justified as defense of their citizens. Admiral Quinn received daily reports of Vraxian military units surrendering rather than face human forces. The psychological impact of the Horizon's Edge video, which was now being broadcast across Vraxian space by human information warfare specialists, was devastating to enemy morale. Vraxian soldiers watched humans fight against impossible odds rather than surrender, and they understood they were facing an enemy with a level of determination they couldn't match. "Admiral, we've located Krelthar," Commander Tucker reported. "He's fortified on Drakmor with the remnants of his fleet, about 75 ships still under his command." Quinn studied the tactical display. Drakmor was heavily defended with orbital weapons platforms and planetary shields. Taking it would be costly. But that's where Krelthar was, and Krelthar was the reason they were here. "Send a message to all human forces," Quinn ordered. "Final phase begins now. We're going to Drakmor. We're going to capture the officers responsible for the Horizon's Edge, and we're going to show the galaxy that humanity keeps its promises." The human fleet assembled in orbit around the moon of a nearby planet. 300 ships ready for the final battle. Across human space, billions watched the live feeds, waiting to see justice delivered. On Drakmor, Krelthar stood on his fortress command center, looking at the sensors showing the approaching human fleet. He had started this war believing humans were weak. Now he knew the truth. But it was far too late to undo his mistake. The battle for Drakmor was about to begin, and the entire galaxy was watching. The battle for Drakmor began at dawn, though dawn on that fortress world meant little in the darkness of space. The human fleet moved into position around the planet with military precision, their ships forming a blockade that nothing could break through. Warmaster Krelthar watched from his command center, surrounded by the 75 ships that represented the last strength of the Vraxian military. Admiral Quinn broadcast one final message before the battle began. "Warmaster Krelthar, you have one last chance to surrender yourself and your officers for trial. Do this, and no more Vraxian lives need to be lost today. Continue to resist and we will take you by force." Krelthar's response was to order his fleet to attack. Pride and fear drove him now. He could not accept that he had been wrong, that humanity was not weak, that his actions had doomed not just himself, but his entire civilization's standing in the galaxy. The Vraxian fleet launched from Drakmor's orbital platforms, moving to engage the human vessels. It was brave but futile. The humans had spent the last 2 months learning everything about Vraxian tactics and technology. They knew every weapon, every defensive measure, every command protocol. Squadron Commander Nick Carter led his fighters in again, but this time they were joined by hundreds of drone craft controlled by artificial intelligence. The Vraxians found themselves fighting not just human pilots but coordinated swarms that attacked from every angle. Their point defense systems, already outdated compared to human technology, simply couldn't keep up. The capital ships engaged in brutal combat. Drakmor's orbital platforms opened fire with massive energy weapons that could crack moons. But human ships danced between the fire, their navigation so precise it seemed impossible. Chief Tactical Officer Ryan Hughes had spent weeks developing algorithms that predicted Vraxian firing patterns, and now those predictions gave the human fleet a critical advantage. Direct hit on Platform 7, Commander Gary Tucker reported from the Defiance Bridge. Their shields are down. Have the Marines stand by, Quinn ordered. We're going to board and capture that platform. Commander Beth Sullivan and her Marine teams launched from assault ships, crossing the gap between vessels in armored drop pods. The Vraxians fought hard to defend their station, but the human Marines were relentless. Beth led her team through corridors slick with coolant leaks and past damaged bulkheads, her powered armor absorbing hits that would have killed an unarmored soldier. Platform captured, Beth reported 30 minutes later. 70 Vraxian prisoners, all being treated according to protocol. It was the same across the battlefield. Human forces captured or destroyed every Vraxian position with mechanical efficiency. This wasn't rage or revenge now. This was professional soldiers doing a job that needed to be done. The emotional fury that had united humanity was still there, but it was focused through military discipline into something far more effective. Within 6 hours, the Vraxian fleet was broken. Krelthar's flagship was crippled, drifting in orbit with its engines destroyed and shields collapsed. The War Master himself sat in his command chair, staring at displays that showed nothing but defeat. Human Marines breached his ship. Krelthar considered fighting to the death, but what would that prove? That Vraxians were brave? Everyone already knew that. What they had learned today was something else. That bravery meant nothing against an enemy with superior technology, better training, and most importantly, total unity of purpose. Lieutenant Kate Pierce was part of the boarding team that reached the bridge. She was the one who placed restraints on Krelthar's claws, the one who formally arrested him for war crimes. Her brother Andrew had died on the horizon's edge, and now she stood face to face with the being responsible. "You killed my brother," Kate said quietly, her voice steady. "He was an engineer. He was exploring the stars because he wanted to learn about the universe, and you murdered him because you thought humans were weak." Krelthar looked at her, seeing not rage but something far more frightening in her eyes. Cold determination, professional discipline. He realized that she could kill him right now. Probably wanted to kill him but wouldn't because she followed her orders and believed in her system of justice. "What have I done?" Krelthar whispered, finally understanding. "You woke us up," Kate replied. "You reminded humanity why we trained for war even while hoping for peace. Come on, you've got a trial to attend." The battle was over. Drakmor surrendered. Across Vraxian space, the remaining military commanders laid down their arms rather than face the human fleet. The war that Krelthar had started with the destruction of one small ship had ended in total defeat. Admiral Quinn transmitted a message to the Galactic Concordat. "The military operations are complete. We are ready to turn over all prisoners for trial and begin peace negotiations with the Vraxian civilian government." The trial took place on neutral ground, at the Concordat Assembly Station. Krelthar and 17 other Vraxian officers stood accused of war crimes, piracy, and murder. The evidence was overwhelming. The video from the horizon's edge was played for the assembled representatives of hundreds of species. They watched Jake Morrison refuse to surrender. They watched the desperate battle. They watched 42 humans die fighting for their right to explore in peace. Admiral Quinn testified, explaining humanity's response. "We did not come to the stars looking for war. We came hoping to find friends, to share knowledge, to explore wonders together, but we came prepared, because our history taught us that peace is only possible when backed by strength." He looked directly at the Concordat representatives. The Vraxians violated something fundamental. They attacked explorers. If the galaxy allows scientific vessels to be destroyed without consequence, then no one is safe. Curiosity becomes a death sentence. Discovery becomes impossible. The stars become a place of fear rather than wonder. The Concordat judges deliberated for 3 days. Their verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. Krelthar was sentenced to life imprisonment. The Vraxian High Council was dissolved. The Vraxian Dominion was broken apart, its member worlds freed to form their own governments. But the real change went deeper than legal verdicts. Every species in the galaxy now understood something about humanity that they hadn't known before. Humans looked peaceful, acted friendly, spoke of cooperation and shared knowledge. But behind that peaceful exterior was a species that could mobilize 300 warships in weeks. fight with tactical brilliance, and cross the galaxy itself for revenge. The memorial was built on New Perth, in a park overlooking the city where the first distress call had been received. 42 names were carved in black stone, with Captain Jake Morrison's name at the top. Colonists came daily to pay their respects. Children left flowers. Veterans saluted. The inscription read, "They sailed into the unknown seeking knowledge and peace." They found neither, but their sacrifice reminded the galaxy what humanity will do for its own. We are explorers first, but we are protectors always. Admiral Quinn attended the memorial dedication. He stood in his dress uniform, surrounded by the families of the lost crew. Kate Pierce was there, wearing her Marine insignia. Lisa Grant's parents held each other and cried. Dr. Paul Sanders's daughter, who was only 7 years old, asked her mother why her daddy had to die so far from home. Quinn had no easy answer for that. War never had easy answers, but he could offer this. Their deaths had meaning. The Horizon's Edge's last stand had united humanity and shown the galaxy that humans could not be pushed around. Future explorers would sail safer because of what happened here. The galaxy was different now. Human exploration vessels no longer traveled alone. A small fleet accompanied each mission, not to conquer or intimidate, but to ensure that what happened to the Horizon's Edge would never happen again. Other species took note and adjusted their behavior accordingly. The Galactic Concordat passed new laws protecting scientific vessels. The Morrison Protocols made attacking explorers a universal crime with severe consequences. The galaxy had learned the lesson that humanity taught. Some lines must not be crossed. Krelthar sat in his cell on a prison world, serving his life sentence. He had decades to think about his mistake. He thought about the human ship he had destroyed, believing it would be easy. He thought about how that single action had brought an entire species crashing down on his civilization. He thought about the look in Lieutenant Kate Pierce's eyes when she arrested him. That combination of loss and discipline and unshakable determination. On Earth, in the Terran Parliament, humanity continued to debate and argue and make plans for the future. They had proven they could fight. Now they could return to what they really wanted, exploring, learning, making friends among the stars. But they would never again be seen as weak or naive. The price of that reputation had been 42 lives. But perhaps those lives had purchased safety for millions more. Jake Morrison's final words became part of human culture. Taught in schools, remembered in ceremonies. We're not fighting because we think we can win. We're fighting because it's who we are. It was a reminder of what humanity valued: courage in the face of impossible odds, loyalty to one's own, and the willingness to stand up for what was right even when it was easier to surrender.